Hey, I'm Tommy, and you were on the Love Boat. What's happening? This one isn't going to take a long time, I don't think, people, but there's an awful lot being made about Sean Combs. About Sean Combs and his terms of release. This is kind of this is something that's fun to talk about because everyone wants to speculate what's going to go on in this man's future. A lot of what's being said, though, is gray at best. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you exactly what Sean Combs is going to have to put up with after he leaves prison. What I'm about to read you, everybody who leaves the feds has to do what I'm about to read you. This is not unique. Hello, Jane Aldrich, good to see you. Brock Bandy, Relatable Reese, how are you? Good to have you here. This is all standard release. Everybody has to do this. So don't conflate this with something that they're doing. Hello, Amy, with something that they're doing just to Sean Combs. Reporting requirements. When you leave federal prison, you must report to a probation officer within 72 hours of release as directed and as directed thereafter. Provide truthful information about residence, employment, and activity. This 72 hours gets more people thrown back in prison than just about anything else because drugs stay in your system for 72 hours. So most people assume that they can go in there and they can pee in a cup and it's not going to get them busted. When you call your probation officer, he can say, I want to see you in the next 30 minutes. He could also say, I want to see you in 3 days. I had 72 hours when I got released from the bank robberies. And I was released in Colorado and I was going back to Nevada. So when I got back and I reported within my 72 hours, he said, yeah, I'm not in town. And he gave me 5 more days. If I had, I could have gotten in a lot of trouble in that time. A lot of people do. I did not. Took a while for me to get in trouble again. Travel restrictions. Cannot leave the Judicial District of Southern District of New York without permission, surrender passport, and obtain approval for any international travel. I'll tell you right now, you're not going anywhere outside of your state or your county without getting permission. A lot of this stuff that they write, once you get into a probation office, I said to him, I know I can't leave the country. He said, you can't leave the state. He said, if you want to go as far as Vegas, which is still within the state of Nevada, I had to get permission. I also had to tell Las Vegas that I was coming. I had to tell people where I was going to be hanging out, what hotel I was going to be at. These are things that this is everybody. Now, you can get a really laid back probation officer. Those things happen. Someone's going to send me an email today and say, I never even saw my federal probation officer once. I'm guessing you were in LA, New York, Chicago. Sorry, very liberal leaning states. Very often treat crime very differently. I never did probation in a state like that. So for me, I never got that probation officer. That never happened to me. This sounds funny. No new crimes. Apparently, he's not allowed to commit any new crimes. Refrain from committing any federal, state, or local crimes. Cannot possess firearms, ammunition, or destructive devices. If he gets caught with ammunition, 1 bullet can get you 5 years. If you get caught with a bulletproof vest, that's the same thing as having a gun. As far as the feds are concerned, once you are on probation, you can never wear a bulletproof vest. Once you're on federal paper, you can never wear a bulletproof vest again without written permission, which is kind of wild. Reese, are you on vacation? Employment and finances. Supervised compliance. Follow all instruction from the probation officer, including home visits, searches of person and property, and warrantless testing for drugs and alcohol up to 6 times per month. Okay. They can P-test you 6 times a month. If you multiply 6 by 12, you come up with 72. When you actually read the guidelines that you sign, it says 104. So they can P-test you 2 times a week for the entire year, and that's completely kosher. And it gets worse. But I'll get to that later. Employment and finances. Work regularly unless excused. You have to notify your probation officer of any financial changes. Example, assets over $10,000. I never read that. And they say that this is now the new standard release. They either change that for him or because it used to be $500. Now, regardless of what it is, his probation officer is going to say to him, if they keep it at 10 grand, spend more than $10,000 on anything that I don't know about and you have violated. So if he buys a $20,000 watch, if he buys a new sports car, he has to get permission to do that. Again, get a cool probation officer, see what happens, but we'll find out. Victim notification, avoid contact with victims unless approved by the court. They're going to modify that in the next section. That is standard verbiage But since he already has priors for messing with people, they're going to. So here are the special conditions. Special conditions appear on what's called your JOC, your judgment of commitment, of confinement, rather. That judgment, that JOC, is like the low level of paperwork that you can first show somebody when you get there, because they'll allow you to go in with it. And they're going to check to see if you have to register as a sex offender. They're going to see if they say stuff like you're not allowed to be on the internet. All of these things are red flags for somebody that's a freak. But the stuff I'm about to read shows up in the later half of that judgment of commitment. The stuff I just read to you, that's boilerplate on everybody's stuff. This is unique to Sean Combs. No contact with co-defendants or witnesses. Prohibited from communicating directly or indirectly with any alleged victims, witnesses, or co-conspirators on the case, including via third party or social media. A tweet that says Cassie Ventura was full of crap could get this guy violated and thrown back in jail. A text message to anyone that appears. And by the way, when the probation officer shows up and he wants to walk through your house, he can go, give me your phone and your password real quick. That's a problem. And it is a reality. This happens. It is being reported everywhere that the probation officer can show up whenever they want. Hello, Barbara Aldrich. Hey, John. Helsinki, good to see you. Roberta, what's happening? Hey, Brock. This is not a fact. They can't show up whenever they want. There are hours that the probation department will show up at your house. And where I was, they couldn't come past 7 o'clock at night. I know there are other parts of the country that are a little different. They can do that by jurisdiction, but they can't show up at 2:30 in the morning unless they suspect a crime. But if they're just coming out to see how you're doing, they can come out whenever they want, and they can do it on a Monday and then come back on a Tuesday. And that they're fond of doing that because they assume that once they leave, the person's going to let their hair down and leave their bong on the coffee table, kind of a thing, right? So they tend to double back on you a lot. Residence and curfew restrictions. He must reside in a location approved by probation, likely New York-based, subject to electronic monitoring. That's an ankle monitor or bracelet for the first 12 months post-release, with a potential 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. So he's not going out at night. That ankle monitor, that's not standard operating procedure for anybody in the feds. I think that they're worried this guy's gonna go off the plantation, that he's gonna be out partying at 2 o'clock in the morning. So they're gonna put a monitoring device on him so that a computer can tell you where Diddy is within about 100 yards at any given point. And that 100 yards, that is probably 15 or 20 years old. I bet you they're a lot better at it now. I'll bet you they're a lot better at it now, but that's what it used to be. They're pretty accurate. They know when you leave the house. Substance abuse. This is where it gets ugly, folks. Substance abuse, mental health treatment, mandatory participation in a substance abuse program, given the evidence of drug use in the case, and mental health counseling, including sex offender treatment if recommended by evaluators, and random drug and alcohol testing required. That has nothing to do with that other 102, or what did they say, 72 times that his probation officer can test him, right? Dude is 50-something years old. I doubt he'll go back to his old ways unless he can't stay clean. Well, here's the problem with that, because I would tend to agree with you. And this is backed up by science, right? Your point levels in a prison drop absolutely remarkably when you hit 50, because statistically speaking, you're going to stop being a screw up at 50. Your testosterone's less, your knowledge is higher. You hopefully have a little bit of wisdom from the street and probably a lot of wisdom from prison. And it's a place most guys don't want to go back to. The problem with that is most of the time when they're doing that research, they're looking at guys that spent a lot of time in prison. Diddy's going away for the first time at the age of 55. That's odd. He had not slowed his lifestyle down at 55. And one of the things that just does not seem to be rehabilitatable in any way is people that have sexual deviant problems, like rapists and molesters and people that do a lot of the things he's been accused of. Now, have they been proven? They have not. But he's been accused of an awful lot of really disgusting things, from children all the way through adults. That probably will be more difficult for him to quit. That's just an opinion, but I don't think we're going to see this guy slow down. He has been a narcissist that lived like an emperor, right, for the first 55 years of his life. Well, at least after even in the early days. Right, he was living with people that they were selling drugs and had a lot of money. They moved to a very nice part of town where it was upwardly mobile. It was the yuppies of the day kind of thing. So this guy hasn't done a lot of stuff in his life that really tried him as a man. He surrounds himself with bodyguards, right? This is going to be a very difficult row for this guy to hoe, in my opinion. And I don't think he's going to be able to. I think he could probably back off on the drugs. People tend to do that. I think being a weirdo, this guy's sexual proclivities lend themselves to wanting to watch men abuse women. If he gets caught for any of that, he's not only going back to prison, but he's screwed 6 ways from Sunday. You don't want to go back on exactly what you're out on. First of all, every time they violate this guy, if they decide to, they can just give him another term of probation of 5 more years. He can go into jail, do whatever time he had left, and when he gets out, he still has to do that 5 years of probation. They don't let that go. It's not like the state where they tap out and go, you're just not probation material. The state will say that. And then they'll incarcerate you for a longer period of time, and you do your what would be parole, right? Your parole number, you just do in prison. In the feds, they go, oh, no, you can go ahead and do that number. But every time you violate and get sent back, the judge will just restart the clock on how much time. If you get a really cool judge and you got 3 years in, he might send you to prison and then give you a 3-year tail on your 5, but they never just get rid of it. I've never seen that happen. Internet and technology limits restricted use of internet-enabled devices, all online activity monitored, no anonymous accounts or encrypted apps without approval. Social media posts must be pre-reviewed by probation. This is death. I'm sorry, this is death. This is not just a guy, hey, Lisa Smith, good to see you. This is not just, Peter, I'm glad you're here. I appreciate that, Peter. That's a kind thing to say. This is going to be really difficult for him because if you take away a guy's sexual proclivities, more often than not, he's just going to look at other people doing them. That's not an option for him either, right? If this guy's looking at porn, he could literally be violating his paper. These are conditions that are given to sex offenders. He is not a registered sex offender. He was not convicted of a sexual crime. Although it sounds like the Mann Act ought to be a sexual crime, it is not, in the eyes of the law, something that someone needs to register for. Because traditionally, it is an exchange of money, right? You're paying somebody to go across state lines and have sex with you. While that is a felony, it doesn't rise to the level of raping somebody or forcing yourself on somebody or any of that. I think that the examples of what he did to the people that he flew out, it didn't sound very abusive to the men, the male prostitutes he was paying, but it didn't sound particularly pleasant to the females that were involved in this. So I think that's probably why this internet technology limit is in there. This means that everything he does is monitored, folks. This means that when the probation officer goes to his house, he's going to say, hand me that phone. And when they say all internet activity must be monitored, they're going to put a device on his stuff that his probation officer can look at. Now, my gut says, since the guy got caught with 13 cell phones, yeah, do the math on that. 13 cell phones when he didn't have to hide from the federal government, I think there's a decent chance that he's going to start grabbing more equipment. Trouble with that becomes he's also locked in his house, which means there's only a couple of ways you're going to be able to use that device. One of them is going to be to go on Wi-Fi, right? And the other is going to be to go through a internet service provider hooked up directly to your phone. These things are very easy these days to track. He also would have to hide those phones beautifully because when the probation officer comes in, and he or she will, they're going to be looking for those. That's one of the things that they're going to be looking for. Employment restrictions. This is big too. Cannot work in roles involving the management of others. Put a 2 in the chat if that sounds like it might be something for the man who runs Bad Boy Records to do. They're not going to let him work at Bad Boy. I've told people this on the air before about me, and everybody said, come on, man, that can't be true. I worked as a public speaker, right? So I said to him, if I'm going to work, I'm probably going to have to do at least some kind of traveling because I work as a public speaker. And he said, oh, no, I'm not letting you work in that field. Boom, done. Even if I could get a job as a public speaker within town, he let me do 2 shows that way, but he wouldn't let me do it full time. And the reason actually makes sense. It doesn't feel good when they're doing it to you, but he doesn't want me hanging out with the same people that I hung out with when I was partying, right? So Diddy's not going to be able to be in a management position over anybody. If he gets caught even like pretending to manage someone's career, how is this egomaniac not going to be all over social media trying to promote himself? I don't think this is going to work out well for him. I don't have high hopes for him completing this. He also can't work in the entertainment industry without court approval. Business dealings must be transparent to probation. So, hey, we're talking to a new artist. No, you're not. That's a management position. You're over somebody. He has to do 30 hours a week. That's standard operating procedure as well. And they say it has to be meaningful employment. In other words, they don't want a federal probationer getting a job where they sit in a chair and they look over a parking lot. I know that this might sound silly because it's hard getting a job when you first get out of federal prison, but you can't have a job where you sit around all day. They want you to be active. They want you to be learning. They want you to be doing things that, in theory, are going to make all of these things maybe a little easier, right, for some actual rehabilitation. Financial oversight. Surrender all firearms, report any income over $500 a month. So buy a little Bitcoin, turn 20 grand, flipping stock. Every single thing you do has to be reported. They will have a forensic team that is going through his stuff. If income comes in from a place that it isn't supposed to, will they violate you and throw you back in prison? Depends on your probation officer, right? I hope he gets a female probation officer. That's my hope, is that he gets a female probation officer. They're tougher. In my experience, they're always tougher. And it's not because they're cruel or any of that, but what these people do is they stick to the letter of the law. They don't give wiggle room. Men tend to do a little of that, although in the feds, it's completely different in the state. It's if you go into your probation officer in the feds and you say, I just relapsed and you haven't tested me for it, but I'm on dope and I'm struggling like hell and I really want to get off of it, there's a 99% chance your probation officer is going to go, I'll help you. If they catch you and you fail a drug test and you say, hey, I have a problem, I want help, he's going to go, screw you. You should have come to my office when you were hurting and I would have helped you. And I do know tons of stories of people that got scared crapless, they relapsed, and instead of waiting, because what happens is this: when you first get out, you get put on a color system in the feds: red, white, blue, green, black. If your color is white, right, the lighter the color, the more often you're going to get tested. Eventually, I got moved to black, right? So they might test you 3 times a year, 4 times a year. It's random. You never know when it's going to come. So you sort of have to be on your toes. But that's when you tend to see these people who catch a habit, who relapse past a couple of days of doing dope or whatever. They start to catch a habit. If you walk in there, right, and you tell them that, especially at that phase, so you got to the black phase, that means that you went through a lot of colors and you did everything right and you showed up for all your meetings and you were never not home, or they didn't think you answered the door or any of that stuff. His Fourth Amendment rights are suspended when he leaves prison. The Fourth Amendment rights protect you from illegal search and seizure. Now, this gets conflated as well. I've already heard at least 3 people that report on this say any cop that wants can walk up to Diddy and search him. That is not what it means when it says you surrender your Fourth Amendment rights. You surrender your Fourth Amendment rights to one person, and that is your probation officer. Your probation officer can, for lack of a better way to think about it, deputize a couple of people in the office to work your case as well. And hello, Twat. And those people will also have an opportunity to search that person for always, forever, for life. I'm glad you're here. What do I think about the Robert Brooks trial? I'm going to be talking at length about the Robert Brooks trial. So keep stopping back. That's something that I actually have a show planned on. The big thing on this, folks, is the substance abuse and mental health programs. This is the one that's going to kill him, because when he shows up, they have determined everybody is supposed to go do a $100, and they didn't write this down, but he has to do it as well. Everybody has to do a $100, $99 drug and alcohol evaluation. It's one of the best hustles the feds ever came up with. All of the judges all have a niece or a nephew that goes and gets the certification to do these, and they channel all of these to family members. It's just a great hustle. I mean, you do the drug evaluation in jail, but then you have to pay for another one the second you walk out the door. It's just a hustle. But normally they say all substance abuse is going to be based on what happens in that first drug and alcohol screening. That's not what's going on with Diddy. They have determined by his case that he needs treatment. So no matter what happens at any of these other meetings, the judge has mandated this. It's written in his judgment of commitment. So he gets to this program, and the program can look at him and say, we drug test 3 times a week. That's going to be on top of what the probation department does. There's no chance in hell. Now, if he's doing drugs, he's going to get caught. These aren't drug tests that you can fake. And if he gets out and people are like, he hasn't failed 1 drug test, well, then he hasn't done any drugs. The way that the feds do it is nothing like the state. They've got an unbelievable budget. The state usually tests for between 5 and 10 panels. They say panels because you pee in a cup, and each one has a piece of litmus paper in it that will either turn positive or negative. The bigger the number of panels, the more expensive the cup. The feds rather, have a 32 panel cup. 32. You'd be hard pressed to spit out the names of 32 drugs, especially when you keep in mind that Valium, Xanax, all of those are benzos. They're all under one title. You're just going to fail for benzos. So I don't mean by name. I mean categories. There are 32 categories of drugs in there, including 6 monoacetylmorphine, which is what heroin is in the body for about the first 6 to 9 hours, depending on how much you do. Your body takes all opiates, processes it out so that you can pass it through the liver and through the bladder. In order to do that, it has to turn whatever is in your body into morphine. And that's how it works. So very often, take George Floyd. George Floyd, they said he didn't test positive for heroin. He did have morphine in his system. We don't know what the hell he had in his system because they didn't test for 6 monoacetylmorphine. He could have done a shot of heroin 2 minutes before he went into that store to pass the fake 20. It's important that all of these drugs get tested. They also test for metabolites, right? Some of those panels are metabolites. So there are drugs that get out of your system very quickly, but the metabolites of you doing that drug could be in your system for 2 weeks. If your metabolism, if you have any of those metabolites too high on the scale, you're done. What are beans? Do you mean like Cheech and Chong? We're smoking beans. We're smoking beans. If that's what you're talking about, it was a drug called Mandrax. And Mandrax was just a Quaalude made in another country. It came in a little clear package that had Mandrax written on it in green, but it's an RORA 714 or a lemon 714. In fact, it's just methaqualone. The difference was it was made in another country, and the bonding agent that they used to hold it all together, if you smoked it, allowed the drug to be taken through your lungs. So it was a pill that people smoked, and it just turned you into an absolute idiot. Klonopin is a benzodiazepine, so it would test under benzos. Other than flunitrazepam, which would be Rohypnol, that's about the tallest of the benzos. Klonopin is the top of the food chain. Valium and Librium and things like that are at the bottom of the food chain, but all of them are the tranquilizers that we adopted in the Western society because things like Tuinol and Seconal and phenobarbital, any of the barbiturates were deemed to be far too dangerous. People took things like Quaaludes to go to sleep, and a lot of them just didn't wake up. So it is a pill. Yeah, it is a pill. Smoking beans, that's definitely a pill. It's called Mandrax. It comes in a little, and if you bought it, it would come in a sheet of 100, right? There were 100 of them on the sheet, and you could roll them up. It was just another way to get Quaaludes after Quaaludes were gone. But Mandrax, it was in the system of a lot of famous people that died. Marilyn Monroe had Mandrax in her system. Jimi Hendrix had Mandrax in his system. So it was, they can also do a hair test, says Mike Bragg. They can. However, here's what happens. If you fail on that cup, and I walked in once, right hand to God, it was on the last time. So I haven't done dope in any of that time. But I went in and he said, you failed. And I went, oh, no, I didn't. Right? No, I did not. And he's like, you did. And I said, what did I fail for? And he said, opiates, like of all the things. And I said to him, how much did I fail by? Because poppy seeds, there's a lot of things. Even ibuprofen can tip the cup. And he goes, oh, you don't have anything to worry about. He goes, because from here, we're going to do a test on it that will tell you how many parts per million you have in your system. He's like, and if it came from something like that. And I had 3 really bad nights of sleep. And when he called back, he said there was actually nothing in the system. So sometimes you just get a bad cup, but they don't allow that to get anybody thrown back in prison. On the flip side of that, if you go in and they think that you're somehow getting away with it, they'll just send it off for a test. And but yeah, they can do hair follicle. There's been a lot made about the hair follicle test that isn't true. If you actually research the hair follicle test, you can cheat a test when on probation. They watch you. You can't cheat. No, you absolutely cannot cheat the feds. They have mirrors at the probation department where I was, and I was at 2 different Fed probations. There's a mirror like this. So it's a wall and it's at the toilet. So they stand on one side of you where they can look at you, and then they can see your junk from the other side and from the front. And you got to take your pants down. You got to take your shirt up. You can't wear a jacket. They are really serious about that. Tommy, if he's doing drugs now in jail, does that hurt him, or it counts until he sees his probation officer? Oh, it'll keep him in jail. That's what will happen. So if you drop a hot, which is the term that is used in there. And by the way, because, and I'm sure somebody will put him on point if he's got any homeboys in there. He might not. I mean, everybody might hate him, but if there's anyone that's done time, they're going to say to him, let me look at your judgment and commitment. And when they read that part about drug testing on the street, they're going to say to him, you're on the hots. And the hots mean, like, I went in, I was a heroin addict, right? So when I went in, they said, we're testing you every single time that there's a test, you're going to get tested. So if they test 6 people in the room, it's going to be 6 people and me. When you're on the hots, they just test you nonstop. And while I was still using, I just went in and thought, oh, lose all my good time. I mean, that's kind of the attitude. But if Sean Combs is using, they're going to catch him. And the first time they catch him, he'll lose 27 days of good time, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's half of a year worth of good time. So the next time they catch him within the same 12-month time period, he only loses half of that. Congress determined that you can't take all of somebody's good time in 1 year. If he gets caught a third time after that, it won't affect him in terms of good time, but they will take away every single privilege you could possibly imagine and probably ship him to a new yard. But yeah, it's there is no privacy. I don't think you can imagine what the term no privacy means unless you've been to a federal prison. If you go to visiting, you're going to get naked before you go in, and you're going to get naked before you come out. And I mean naked, bend over, spread them and cough, kind of naked, while a guy shines a flashlight in your backside. It's dehumanizing and it's degrading. There's no privacy, and if you don't want to do it, you probably shouldn't become a criminal, right? I don't want anybody feeling sorry for the any of the stuff that I went through in prison. I brought that on myself, and Diddy has too. So he's going to have to deal with a completely different road to hoe. Well, to be honest, it's the same in state prison. The only reason I say that, Sickly Nation, is because I've done a state rip. So I've done one term in a state prison. And when I got out, I saw my probation officer twice in 2 years. I mean, that was a laid back cat. I don't think he really wanted to do his job in any way. But here's another thing. You can take Suboxone legally when you're on probation, but only if you have the prescription before you started that probation. Now, if you were to go into your probation officer and say, I can't stay sober on the street, they might let you do that, but they have the right to say, nope, not going to happen. They literally give these people the power of God over the people that they babysit. And the feds just don't care about money at all. You don't test at the state, at least where I was. You don't test at a federal facility. You go to a company that does this for a living. Again, probably owned by somebody in the Bureau of Prisons. But you go to a place that just does this for a living, and they do it for the federal government. And they, as sad as this sounds, they get bonuses for the people they catch. Like if they catch someone trying to go in, but on that 32 panel test, and this is not part of the 32 panels, it is an additional 5. They check for adulterants. Bleach is one of them. Vinegar is one of them. None of these things actually help you pass a drug test either, but they're all urban legends. So many people are trying. It's just an easy way to catch more people. They're also going to do what is called specific gravity. They're going to take a pipette and take a very small amount of urine out of your cup, and they're going to drop it into this little silver tray that has a hole in the middle of it. And it is going to tell you the specific gravity of the liquid, how much solids are in your pee. Because as we go through and process stuff out of our body, it all doesn't go away. There are absolutely parts of us, parts of what we eat and things of that nature that are going to make it out and into that cup. So it's kind of it's a very difficult system to beat. I went in once after working out and I'd been drinking a bunch of water, and he said, there's not enough solids in your pee. And I was like, well, then I'll hang out for 2 hours and do it again, which they will let you do, right? Because if you were trying to beat it with water in 2 hours, that's going to be out of your system and you're going to fail. So when I went the next time, he's like, yep, your specific gravity is good. But it is, they are really into this. They are super, super into this. And he's going to run into the exact same thing in when he goes for drug treatment and for sex offender treatment. So he's going to be sitting in a room with a lot of freaks. And if you sit in these meetings and you don't say anything, then they don't sign off. And they have to sign off for you to get done with this. So when it says, he might have to do 1.5 years of drug counseling. If he goes in and does everything right, he could be done with that in probably 9 months. They are, say what you will, they are fairly understanding of people that do want to turn their life around. If you actually want to become a citizen, and I wouldn't have told you this on any other time I did probation, but the last time I didn't do anything wrong, and it was a whole lot different how I was treated. I mean, did they come out to search the house? They did. Did they come out a lot? They did. They were good for at least two visits a month all the time. And depending, sometimes it was 4 or 5. Here's the other thing that's traumatic as hell in the feds. The federal probation officers don't last long. They all want a better job. So they're all in training to get more certification so that they can go from that position to either a supervisor or someone who is a federal probation officer who works with specific types of individuals that require more training. So someone will train a lot more so that they only work with the freaks. They only work with sex offenders or whatever. And they're going to be paid more money for that because it required more education. Same with people who only deal with very specific kinds of drug cases, because somebody that smokes PCP, right, or someone that's doing embalming fluid or SHRM or whatever you want to call it, those people are a very different thing to handle than others. Diddy is charismatic as hell. He will do good in any prison or probation. Yeah, I don't buy that. And with all due respect, that's not going to carry shit for weight in the feds. There were a lot of really charismatic guys that went through the feds. Jared from Subway went through the feds and got the bark beat off him a few times. He was fairly charismatic. What Diddy is going to represent to most of those guys is a guy that lived the life that they wanted to live and then did all of this foul crap that they read about in newspapers for a year and a half, most of which he probably didn't do, but they don't have the ability to go online and look up retractions or how many of the 3,300 people that called into the phone line in Texas, how many of those people actually have closed the case or said they didn't have a case or had it thrown out. There are 77 still pending cases against him, all in civil court, right? But here's the problem. The problem is that everybody in there is going to look at this dude in one of 2 ways. And I've watched this in the feds. Gucci Man was in there when I was in there. Big Meech, I was on 3 yards with that dude. Now, Meech is a little bit different because Meech will beat the bark off you. Like, that dude really is a gangster. He's not a phony like Diddy is. You mess with Meech, and he was huge. He was absolutely massive. Like, he worked out nonstop. That dude was huge and doesn't take a lot of crap from anybody. But most of the famous dudes who go in there, people want to tax them. They want to go up and if they're kind to them, it's based on Diddy's going to be telling every one of these people all the great stuff he's going to do for them when he gets out. But he wanted a cush spot and they turned it down. He had a chance to probably do some pretty soft time, right? Yeah, Kathy says Diddy's going to look like a bank to them. For real. They call them ATMs. They don't call them banks, but it's the exact same thing. Like guys who come in and play poker, we call them ATMs. Guys got nothing but money and no brains, and they would come in and lose massive amounts of money. Sounds like a nightmare from hell, his terms. Yeah, these aren't going to be easy, and they're not easy for any federal inmate. This is why the recidivism rate is up in the 80s, right? 80% of the people don't make it off paper. This is a difficult thing to go through. And normally you would say, well, it's going to be a lot easier for a guy with a lot of money because he's not going to be in the same position of having to become successful, right? This is the biggest ego I've ever seen. In my lifetime, there isn't an ego bigger than Diddy's. While he was sitting at MDC Brooklyn, he was making a hit list of the people that he could definitely get to drop whatever they were going to say in court with either money or intimidation, right? This isn't a good dude. Cassie's case broke in November, right? You remember when all of this came out? We started talking about it way before then, but the papers, when she filed, it was in November, and it got crazy from there, right? Absolutely insane. He hired his attorney in December. Not for the civil case, because he had settled with her instantly. He settled the following day after she filed the lawsuit, but he knew it was coming. So he had already hired his legal team by December, but he wasn't arrested until, he hired them at Christmas. It wasn't arrested until September, right? Yeah, his lawyers have an even bigger ego. They're acting like his charges are nothing serious. It's just that they know that the idiot masses, if you say the same thing over and over again, people believe it. This is the same guy who said he used 9 people's numbers. This is done every day in jail. Trust me, it's not in the feds, right? You use somebody's PAC number and they assume you're planning an escape, right? Why else do you need to call on someone else's phone? They think you're planning an escape or paying for drugs, and they raise hell. They take away all kinds of rights. Now, MDC Brooklyn isn't a federal prison. It isn't. It's a county jail. It might be federal, but it's a county jail, and you can't conflate the two things. It's hard to write somebody up for anything before they have a number. Well, before they're convicted, you actually get a number. You get your prison number the day they arrest you. They're pretty ambitious that way. Well, Diddy in any prison will have a limit on what he can spend, usually $200 or $300 a week. In the feds, he can spend $360 a month But what he would do is he would have to send money. And this happens all the time. Guys come in with bad paperwork. And if the shot caller on the yard's a piece of shit, then he'll say to the guy with bad paperwork, I'll keep you safe and you can stay here. There was a famous case of this in Victorville. If you happen to be a Fed, you know what I'm talking about. But they cut the shot caller's head off for this. It was not considered something you want to do. But the shot caller at Victorville was allowing sex offenders to live on the yard if they paid rent. Now, 300 ain't going to get it done. So you send out kites, little small pieces of paper with people who are going home or people are getting transferred to a new yard, and you communicate to the street. You wouldn't believe all the ways they do it. They'll take a piece of paper and write on it, right? They'll make like a stylus and write in urine. And then they'll write over the top of it. And when the person gets it, if you hold it up into light, you can read. It's disgusting, right? Lemon juice will work too, but there's a lot of ways that people get info to the street. And what they say is, your people need to send $6,000 to this person, and that person is going to take care of finding enough people to send the money in. It's a hustle. It's a con. It goes on every day. This is why they lose their mother-loving mind when somebody uses someone else's PAC number, because it's always about, I can only spend $360. I'll send $360 to you, and you can give me the dope. I'll send $360 to you, and you can give me the escape tool. Whatever the hell it is, they always assume the worst. So, but you're right. You can't spend more than $360, and that's in a month. You can't spend more than 180 something every 2 weeks. So that's how it works in the Feds, except at Christmas time, where they bump that up by $100 a month during Christmas because they figure people are going to do some Christmas shopping. Yeah, his lawyers have to do this, right? And his lawyers, this is another thing that probably isn't getting talked about enough. But his lawyers promised him the world. He freaked out in that courtroom because his lawyers kept telling him he was going to go home. And they didn't do that to set him up for failure or for a crash. It's because he's such a freaking lunatic and a hothead, right? And this is documented over years. They didn't want to sit in front of him and go, there's no way you're going home, right? They knew. I promise you, when they saw what the recommendation was, if the probation office comes back with 50 to 70 months or something like that, you ain't walking. The prosecution and the probation department, right? They do what's called the PSI, pre-sentence investigation. The PSI, they don't just go, well, here's what I think we ought to give them. They sit in a room with you for 4 or 5 hours. They start asking you about stuff you did in high school. The PSI is exhaustive. It's no fun. And you really can't say, well, I'm not commenting on that. I mean, you can, but it certainly doesn't help your sentence, right? You have to just sit in there and do the interview. Mine took 4 hours. It's a terrible process. But then they leave and they take all of that into account. That recommendation from the Department of Probation is the reason that the judge gave him all of these things. So the probation department said, this guy's a sex offender, whether he's on paper or not. He needs sexual therapy. He needs to go to sex offender therapy. He's a domestic violence machine. He beats on every woman he can get his hands on. Maybe we ought to make sure he does that as well. And he's got a drug problem. So all of those recommendations are why these post-conviction rules are in place. And I lost my train of thought earlier, but what I was going to say is that, the Cassie case came out, and Diddy hired his legal team in December. He got arrested in September. In December, he hires him right around Christmas. He gets arrested in September, about mid-month, right? You know what was in his hotel room? Evidence of a freak-off. Bags of Tucci, which is like a designer drug. 2C is what they really call it. It's an abbreviation. It's a designer drug they call pink cocaine, although there's usually not much cocaine, if any, in it. It's just a term because you put it up your nose. But it's a bathtub full of crap. If you buy it in 3 cities, you won't even get the same 3 ingredients. It's just, they put stuff together. Ketamine is popular. They give you some speed to keep you awake, and then they give you some stuff to make you feel like you're, it's like a very cheap version of ecstasy that doesn't last as long. But apparently he was really fond of it. People buy the stuff usually in very small amounts. He had, I think, 10 grams or something in the hotel room, which is a big bag, right? 1/4 ounce is 7. That's a big bag. But he was doing freak-offs there, waiting for them to arrest him. So this is not a cat, when you go, he might get out and do well. He knew he was going to New York. Well, he may have thought he was turning himself in. But he knew he was going to New York because he was about to be arrested. What does he do? Has a freak-off. This is a guy that likes watching his girlfriends banged by other dudes. I believe they call that a cuck, right? But he's an epic cuck, and this is how he gets his rocks off. And if you believe the Cassie Ventura interviews and things, it just ramped up over time. It got to the point where these things were happening. In the beginning, it might have been once a month, and then it went to, once every couple of weeks. And by the end, he might have her do it Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And She would need some IV fluid run into her when she was done, right? Get put on oxygen and all of this other crazy stuff. If what you hear is believable, these things were traumatic. I don't see him doing particularly well, especially being a high-profile, experienced lawyer. They should have told Diddy not to book no public speaking engagements until after sentencing. That was one of the funniest things ever. But this is why I say this paper is going to kill him, right? He's going to say, hey, I want to go to Florida and speak. When? Next week. Not going to happen, right? You got to give me 2 weeks notice of anywhere that you want to travel. And by the way, that doesn't mean you're getting it. They can say, yeah, I wasn't in the office that week. File again. And then you just got to push your crap. I traveled a lot. When the last time I was on, not this time, the previous time, I traveled all over the United States. But the amount of hoops that I had to hop through to do it, and I'd say over the course of 2 years, I took 4 trips. And it was difficult in almost every city. The only city that didn't bust my chops was New Orleans. I went down there for New Year's. I called the police department, said, I'm coming down to check in with you guys. I'm a federal probationer. And he's like, why are you coming here? I'm like, well, my probation officer told me to. He said, no, I don't want you to come in here. Have a good time in New Orleans. Don't get arrested and don't make me look bad. I said, all right. Especially being a high profile, experienced lawyer, he really should have, man. He really should have taken care of this. And certainly not brought it up in court. I don't know if they were trying to pressure Subramanian. Some of it. Here's the other thing. You got Stones appealing this. I mean, you got Stones. This could get to the next circuit, and they could go, "You only gave him 50, for real." I mean, there is all kinds of precedents where some jackass who thought that he should have got to walk free. I told the story many times on here, but there was a terrorist who said 27 years. I didn't even blow anything up. I just happened to work with these dudes. And when it came back, the judge said, yeah, you're right. This isn't the right sentence. And then he gave him, I think, 7 or 8 more years. Said you should have got what everybody else got. So this is it's a risky move. By the way, I did a little bit more research, and he definitely flew people into Florida for across state lines as part of the Mann Act, which means his properties in Florida could be seized. I don't think they will be. I really don't. It's going to look like they're really piling on this cat. I think that with what they gave him for his terms of probation, he could turn a 50-month sentence into a life sentence. I mean, this crap happens. It does. You can just keep doing it on the installment plan. You're going to keep going back in. When I was at Lewisburg Special Management Unit 2013, class of 2013, the last cellmate I had was a guy that would work out for like Mr. America, the bodybuilders. When those guys aren't chiseled, they're just massive. They look overweight, but they're really, really big. He was a big dude, but that's exactly what happened to him. He lived in San Diego, California, and he would go into Mexico and buy steroids and drugs and whatever and party there. And he wouldn't come back in time for probation or anything like that. And every time they caught him, they sent him back to prison for 3 years, and then gave him 3 more years paper. And his original sentence was like 24 months. It was just for steroids. And he had done 15 years incarcerated, not just the back and forth, which had taken 20 something, but 15 years actually behind bars on a 24-month sentence. This kind of thing can happen. It really can. It seems like news lately, feds are looking for another charge on him while he's still locked up. The thing is, it absolutely looks that way. However, none of the people that are saying that have anything to back that up. I'd love to talk about that. Now, do I think it's going to happen? I do. But I'm not going to come out here and tell you it's a lock, because here's what we know that can actually be proven. Believe it or not, California is pretty seriously trying to figure out a way to prosecute him for what he did to Cassie Ventura on that videotape. Yes, the statute of limitations is up. Their argument is, well, we just found out about it. We saw the video for the first time. The statute of limitations should start running from that video. I don't know whether or not that'll hold up in court. I don't know whether or not the appeals courts are going to allow that to go through. I love it. I think it's a hell of an idea. I really do. I think it's a hell of an idea. And then the Southern District of New York, there is so much that they took in. There are all of those terabytes of information, 96 devices, 13 cell phones. All of that information is kind of a big deal. And people go, well, double jeopardy. No, it doesn't work like that. They didn't charge him for the guns with the obliterated serial numbers. By the way, that's not particularly weird. Number one, they got to pull the serial numbers off of those guns. And this isn't national security. I mean, Diddy's a jackass, but it sure as hell isn't national security. So it could take 6 to 8 months for that to happen. Then they're going to take that serial number and they're going to have to put it into the CODIS system and try to see if these guns ever did anything wrong. Because God forbid they obliterated the serial numbers because one of these bullets came back to somebody that's already been killed. These kind of ballistics things in the feds can take a very long time. He went to really, really quick. He won't make it long in California prison. They'd sell him up with Masterson. Masterson is in the state and Diddy is in the feds. And the state of California, because of the size of that prison system, as they have yards now that are primarily sex offender yards. In the feds, they're primarily dropout yards. There'll be sex offenders on the yards, but they're doing everything they can to sprinkle those people around the entire place. They don't congregate them as much. So you get people in there that are in protective custody because they're weak. There are people who are in protective custody because they left a gang, probably not weak. There are people in there that are in protective custody because they ran up huge drug debts in prison and didn't pay them. You have to realize that when you get to a prison yard, if you say to somebody, hey, get me dope, nobody's carrying $500 in their pocket, right? So if you say, get me dope, they'll front it to you instantly, right? Yeah, you know what? It is easier to charge somebody that's in prison and certainly build a case against them. I think that there's a really good chance that we're going to see multiple charges come out. One of the other things, if we just do critical thinking and we don't buy into all of the hype and all of the ridiculousness and get all excited again and start talking about sacrifices and every single star in Hollywood having been to a freak off. But if we just sort of do this in an analytical and a critical thinking kind of way, when Cassie Ventura's lawsuit came out, he settled it within 24 hours, right? Didn't want that thing to go on. And the reason he didn't is because the lawyers that he had said, you want this in the press? They're going to end up taking criminal charges off of all of this and going after you. Little Rod's lawsuit is about to go into court. Every time one of these civil lawsuits, you remember the three guys that they call them the Jewish Diddies. There are three brothers that all got, the Alexander brothers out of Florida, big real estate guys. They were on the cover of all these magazines, and now they are in a lot of trouble for drugging women and having sex with them, flying them all around the country. Well, that was a lawsuit. And the lawsuit then spawns all this because any kind of lawyer, it's called malfeasance. If you look at this and go, holy shit, there's crimes in this. You can't just go like this. You got to go, we have to turn this over to the state and see if the state wants to run with this. Yeah. So there are 77 of those lawsuits out there. Let's just do the critical thinking thing and say half of them are people that are just trying to get paid. We'll take the number down to 70 instead of 77 and say that half of them are just trying to get paid. That's 35. Of those 35, let's say half of those stories are weak. That's 17. Now we got 17 times the potential of what happened with Cassie Ventura. And on top of that, we have Little Rod's lawsuit. And Little Rod's lawsuit is rugged. Yes. Will she be charged? Nikki, there's no way to tell. I'll be honest with you. If she were going to be charged for anything, my gut says that she would have been charged in the feds as part of the RICO case. I think that's probably why Sean Combs didn't get convicted of RICO. And there are a lot of people who say there was just no evidence there. I mean, I don't know how people look at that case and see there's no evidence there. You know, this guy was paying for women to live places. He had women set up. If you go through the entire discovery, he had paid to set women up in apartments. So like me, I got a woman over there, 3 apartments down that I'm paying for so I could just go and bang her whatever I want. And I got somebody 4 blocks down here, right? I'm doing that. If you're paying for that out of business funds, well, there's your start, right? They usually call it piercing the corporate veil. If you're a corporation, even if you're a corporation and you own it yourself, you can't go to the store and buy a 6-pack of beer on your corporation. That's breaking the law. The corporation is an entity. The entity can only live to do business. It can't live in my world. It can't buy me a bag of dope. And what Diddy was doing with Bad Boy is absolutely a racketeer influence criminal organization. It rises to the level of RICO. And the people that make videos about this and say, you know, RICO was designed to get 50 people, 60 people. There are RICO cases that are civil. There are RICO cases where nobody went to prison. They went after them civilly, but said your business is absolutely a crime organization. Now, I don't know that any laws can be proven in terms of what, you did illegally, but I sure as hell can show what you're doing with this money. And if you're paying for prostitutes, drugs, guns, putting people up to live in places so that you can go and visit them, trust and believe that's a problem. So I think as these lawsuits drop, there have been many aspects of the Little Rod lawsuit that are no longer going to be moving forward. And I believe his attorney is Tyrone Blackburn. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have a lot of faith in Tyrone Blackburn. If you read the stuff that he's filing on this, he sounds like he's new at this. He was charged with RICO. He was. But what happened is they charged him with only one person, right? How the hell do I know this, Tommy? It's got a really bad memory. It just it picks up things that I wish it hadn't, and I can't ever But he signed some of them, so he probably viewed them as a write-off. You know what? He probably wrote them off, but none of that is legal, right? Everything that he was doing is literally felonious, right? There are RICO cases that only have 2 or 3 people, but the narrative, and we ran with it on the internet. Everybody ran with it on the internet. As soon as they heard it was RICO, and I did it too. It's the reason that these days I'm a little different with how I talk about this. But when it first came out and they said RICO, the logical thought is, oh my God, they're going after everybody in Bad Boy. And then we had people that came out of the woodwork who said, oh yeah, I was there when Christina Karam ordered this, this, and this. I was there when Christina Karam said, we can have you sent to another country. You'll be sold by tomorrow. It's the fruits of a misspent youth, John. And I spent a lot of time in prison. So these are the kind of things that, so one of my best friends in prison was a head of one of the Italian crime families. And he and I spent a lot of time talking about RICO. We spent a lot of time talking about a lot of different stuff. In prison, there's only a couple of subjects that come up. Women, they talk about a lot. Sports, they talk about a lot. Small groups of people talk about politics. Small groups of people talk about books they've read. And the rest of them talk about crime, right? It's the university of crime. What's really sad is most guys walk in and leave a worse criminal than they got when they had first arrived. I tried to not play into that as much. I tried to not hurt people, so to speak, because you get there and someone says, yeah, I'm in here for bank robbery. And you go, really? How much cash did you get? $1,200. You want to go, boy, you're not very good at that. But if you sit and tell them how to get more money, they're going to go out and rob more banks. It's amazing. Guys, I've said this many times on here. I never went to the library, and I don't mean in the SHU or at the special management unit where you're the only one allowed into a law library and it's just a computer. But if I was on a yard that you could walk, like an open yard, then if you went to the law library, not once did I ever go there where there wasn't somebody in there teaching someone else how to make meth. Because guys that were in there for selling meth would meet up with guys that were in there for making meth. And he'd go, man, you won't get caught if you make it, right? Every time you get caught, you're buying it from somebody else, right? Why don't you just make it yourself? And they'll pay the guy. Yeah, I'll buy you 3 bags of coffee a week for a year or whatever. Teach me how to make meth. And they'll be in there going over the hot method versus the cold cooked method. It's the university of crime. Makes a lot of sense if you think about it. One of my favorite cliches is they don't round us up at universities and churches. Right? They tend to get people for federal prison because they're breaking laws. My experience is that their drug habit has gotten to the point where they can't pay for that drug habit without doing illegal things because it starts to require so much money. And, most bank robbers are junkies. Most of the time when you see somebody that does that, it's because they're a junkie. Got my cheese whiz, boy? Sorry. Hopefully somebody got that reference. But you understand the point I'm making. These are bad people, and he's going to be surrounded by bad people of a different variety. You can be tough as hell and tell people you're going to whoop up on them and all of that stuff when you got 6 bodyguards walking around with you, right? Who are all carrying weapons. He got the name Puffy, right? I'm sure you all saw the documentaries. You all read all of this stuff, but he got the name Puffy as a kid because his face would pop up. He'd get all pissed off. You remember those kids when you were younger that would start like hyperventilating? And you're like, damn, this dude's going to grow up to be a serial killer. Well, apparently they can also grow up to be a rapist and a music mogul. And by the way, I'm not piling on there. I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever. There are enough very credible cases moving through the civil part of this where he raped people. And I believe a lot of them. Most of what my DoorDash just made it. I believe very little of what I read, but sometimes Just like even back in the day when we were really all hyped up on this, and I heard that this guy forced someone to their knees, right, to perform oral sex in a place where there were thousands of people gathered, and separating him from them was a cloth. Okay, that doesn't check out, right? That's about the ultimate surrender for a man to do to another man. You can go ahead and shoot me in the head, and you sure as hell aren't going to do it with 2,000 people standing right outside this curtain. So it's not much of a threat. What's that gun going to do to me in here, right? Fire that hand cannon off and see how far you get. It just doesn't pass the smell test at any level. Now, there are other situations that they can also grow up to be a billionaire. Yeah, but if you do a deep dive, that billion is down to an alleged 270 some odd million, which may sound like still, oh, come on, he's never going to run out of that. You wouldn't have thought he would have run out of 700 million, right? He has a lot of property that he has to make monthly payments on. He has a lot of insurance. He has jets. You don't buy a Gulfstar jet, right? You don't go in there and go, here's your $160 million. I want a jet, or whatever they're going for these days. You finance these things, right? And you have huge monthly payments, and you have staff that have to run all of these places, and nothing's coming in. Like the bad boy catalog isn't making him a hell of a lot of money right now. I promise you it's not, right? He's definitely in some trouble financially. Little Rod did say that he was forced to watch him shower while working and apparently masturbate as well. There was one or two of those situations where apparently Diddy was rubbing one out while this guy was in the room. There's also a lot of really damaging stuff in there about, being drugged, waking up in a bed with another man, and Diddy clowning on him about it. Now, is it true? Look, all you can do is look at the totality of the evidence. I don't know Little Rod. I don't know much about him, and he's not an easy guy to research. Apparently, he's very talented as a producer. I think it's probably, if you want to go with, as opposed to beyond a reasonable doubt, if you want to go to a lesser, is it more probable that he did this? I think it probably is. Kathy nails something that's kind of important here, man, right? I'm still not sure Diddy really thinks what he did was all that bad. Meep, one of the first lawsuits is already rolling. All of them are moving through the courts. How long will it be before we see the first one actually come to trial? The next time I do a Diddy show, I'll tell you that, because I did actually look this up. He is going to have to be transported, I think, within the next 3 months for at least some pre-trial motions and things of that, where they're going to want him there. So they're all moving forward. Sickly Ignition says, kind of wild that Diddy with all his money would actually rub one out himself. What's crazy is that's pretty much what he was doing on the street, apparently, right? He just wanted to do it while he watched his girlfriend be abused. So I guess everybody's a little different, right? But you know what's cool? We're now moving into a world where everybody is allowed to just do what they feel good doing, and it's never a problem, right? It's the new morality. If that's what you're into, how am I a bad person to say that? I like women. Does that make me bad? He likes watching them abused. Does that make him bad? I assure you it does. Need to bring morality back to this planet. It would be a much better place to hang out. Well, I think that pretty much sums up the what's going to happen to Diddy on paper. I think most of those are probably answered. There are other Diddy updates that are coming, but I want to make sure that before I do them, I know exactly what I'm talking about. I believe Little Rod was angry that he didn't get paid. I believe he just said things that he knew were happening to others. That's a possibility, and you're not the first person to say that. Absolutely not the first person to say that. I think that there's probably some logic to this, right? Diddy didn't just promise him that he was going to get paid either for always, forever, for life. He promised him a Grammy. He promised him, fame, fortune. He promised him everything, right? Whether or not this ends up, being factual when we get there, it's going to be interesting to see. Nikki says, is he going to stay at MDC or be moved to a less secure prison? He is not. Hello, Lisa Pizza. No, he is not. I mean, I shouldn't say this. The BOP can do whatever they want. I don't see him staying at MDC Brooklyn. That's cruel and unusual punishment. It really is. Once you're sentenced to prison, you have the ability to have a life. So we think of people in jail as being behind bars all day long. Well, unless you're really a screw up, that's not how jail is, or prison, I should say. You get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you go to a job, You come back, you eat lunch, right? There's all kinds of things that you can do with structure. You can go outside, play on the yard, play soccer, play baseball in leagues and things like that. So I don't think they would leave him there. I think that his lawyers would probably freak out. If I had to put money on it, you heard it here first. If I had to put money on it, I would say he's going to end up at Raybrook. You tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's probably where the Bureau of Prisons will send him. Here's why. It says in the paperwork that they want to keep him in the greater New York area, right? So you're looking at Fort Dix or you're looking at Raybrook. If they send him to Fort Dix, he's going to have an opportunity to do all kinds of programs to shorten his sentence. And I don't think Judge Rune Subramanian wants this guy's sentence any shorter than what he gave him. I think he would have liked to have given him 90, but he didn't want to get it overturned. So my gut says, since he's got a little bit of juice in this, and he does, if the judge reaches out to the computation center in Grand Prairie, Texas, he can say, I really don't want him to be there. Now, yeah, this is a great point too, right? This is a solid point. You only stay at MDC if you get a year and a day. MDC is a jail, not a prison. That is a fact. However, they have cadre workers. This is a group of guys that don't change. They are notoriously hideouts. I'm not busting on anybody. If your boyfriend is a cadre worker, I'm sorry. But as a guy that's done time, the people that get jobs at cadres, they're putting there because they want to hide them, right? It's a safe place to hide people. If you're working at MDC Brooklyn and you're doing a 5-year sentence, you can walk around to all the other inmates. They can't walk around to you. The only time you're going to be working, they're going to be locked in a cell. It's a very safe place to hide somebody. Why did the feds take the Ibiza tapes? Is it because of who is on them? They took every tape. This is something that is being reported now, again, because you kind of have to have a great Diddy story. And I could come out and do these. Hey, the feds take the Ibiza tapes. This is what I did the first time Diddy was on the way to trial. The feds seized everything. So that 98 devices, the Ibiza tapes was part of that. Altogether, it was 97 terabytes or some ungodly amount like that. All of that they still have. They haven't gotten rid of any of that. And they have said, we are keeping it. My argument has been, and this is theory, okay? My theory is that's a lot to go through. And if he's like me, and he's like probably many of you, we take pictures. I don't take time and put them into files and do all that thing. I don't. So when I have to look back through pictures, I may be looking at thumbnails where there's 5 or 10 of these things, right? And I could go through those, but I might have to look at 400 pictures of cats before I get to the next thing that's important. I would imagine that on 97 devices, they got to go through these things, image at a time, video at a time, video at a time. Even if you put 40 agents on it, that's a lot of information to go through. If you just do it by bits, it's more info than there is in the Library of Congress. So this is a lot to go through. And in my opinion, that's one of the reasons that they wanted a speedy trial. They said it's because, he's innocent. We don't want him doing any more time than he has to. No, that's not it. What it is they didn't want to give the prosecution 2 years or a year and a half, which is about standard, before you go to trial, for them to look through all that and find anything else. Now, they found a lot else. They knew about the guns. They knew about other abuses. They knew about other victims, but they chose predicate crimes to use in RICO. All of the ones they didn't choose, they could take him to court for in the state or the feds. The only protection he has from being tried again under the double jeopardy law is that they could not charge him for RICO, right? For a RICO charge, because that has been beat, but he can do an awful lot of stuff. It's going to be interesting to see what comes of the Ibiza tapes. It's going to be interesting to see what comes of all of it. I don't think they're done with Diddy, but that's just an opinion. I'm really not convinced that they're done with him. And when I looked at the terms of probation, they are setting this man up for failure. Like no other, they're setting him up for failure. This is an egomaniac, and they're going to say, you can't tour, you can't go do public speaking gigs, you can't manage other people who are touring or doing public speaking gigs. They're really going to go out of their way to make this guy miserable. And they can test him 102 times a year. On top of that, the people at the drug program can test him. They're wanting him to do sex offender therapy. That's going to be, the man in you is going to fight that like you would not believe, right? He's going to go, I'm not a sex offender. And that's probably not how you want to go into those. But why promote those tapes? First of all, Ibiza is a cool sounding name. You mean, why are the feds promoting it? I don't think they are. I think it's people like me that are running with the stories. It's kind of what I think. So much has been seized from him, folks. And it's one of the reasons that he has a restriction on anything online, right? If he goes online and starts surfing the net after he gets out, they're going to be looking at everywhere he's going and what he's looking at. That's a rough way to do time, especially when the other option is you can't leave your house. So you're not going to go out and go do the freaky things you've been doing for your entire life, and don't look at them online either. And his collection, I'm sure he had a thumping spank bank, but all of that has been seized. All of his devices, everything has been seized. By the way, I've heard a lot of people in a lot of places say, oh, he'll get all that back. Don't bet on that. They seized my phone, found nothing on it, and destroyed it. And the way they do it is this. As you're getting out, they go, oh, we'd love to get you off paper, but you have to sign this first. And I said, what is it? It just says that we're going to destroy all the property that we seized from you. And I go, what if I want it back? And they say, well, then the process will start now. We'll have to file paperwork, but you won't be off paper until that gets figured out. Go ahead, destroy it. I mean, you want to be done. You want to be a free man. And everyone I've ever talked to, that's how they did it. The day you're supposed to sign, they pull the paper out and go, we want to destroy all your evidence. I mean, it was probably an old phone by the time I got out, but it was a brand new phone when I went in. That guy is a creeper, Reese. He's one of the sleaziest people that ever lived. And he has celebrated it. People have, he's joked about it on talk shows. There's been so much over the course of this man's life where he is out in your face. I'm not just a creep. I want you to know I'm a creep. You know, well, you got to have locks on the doors. You remember that from, was it Conan O'Brien? He was on the Conan O'Brien show. And Conan O'Brien said to him, what makes a good party? He said, well, you got to have a lot of alcohol, right? And then you got to turn the heat up really hot so that people are sweating. He's like, got to make sure there are locks on the doors. You know the hubris it takes to joke about the things that you're doing to victims on national television? And you think this jackwagon will get through 5 years on federal paper? The first time he tweets something, if one of his friends goes to Cassie Ventura and says, hey, man, Diddy said back off a little bit. She calls the PO, that dude's going to jail. That's it. Diddy's gone. He can't contact anybody that has anything to do with this case, and that's almost everybody he knows. And you can't contact him through a third person. If they come by your house and you're kicking it with, I don't know any rappers, I'm old, but any of those rappers that have a felony, if they walk in and you're having a conversation with a convicted felon, you're going back to jail. You can't hang out with people that have been convicted of crimes. You can't even get a job working for somebody that's been convicted of federal crimes or state crimes, for that matter. You can't work for a felon. You can't be around felons. They're vicious about this stuff. We'll see how he does. And this may come as a shock to you, but I'm not even joking. I'm not rooting against the guy. I would like to believe that the redemption arc can happen to anybody. I really, really believe that. I don't think there's a chance in hell. It's like putting the cookie out on the table for your kid, right? Don't eat that. You know he's going to eat it, right? But you hope he doesn't. I hope that Diddy gets clean in there. I hope that he takes a really good, hard look at why he does what he does to women. I think Diddy was probably molested as a kid. I think that's probably something that happened to this guy. And it could have been by a woman, it could have been by a man, but something happened sexually to this guy when he was young that screwed him up bad. This is not normal behavior. This is abhorrent behavior. This is wicked abnormal, right? Abnormal like a big dog. So I'd like to see the guy turn his life around. I don't think that's going to happen. And this is after he gets out of prison, by the way. If he's in there doing everything right in programming, the odds that someone's going to hurt him are less. He's not going to do that, by the way. I mean, here's the thing. If he gets to Raybrook and they say to him, well, you can program, but none of this stuff gets you time off for your sentence. And I know that everyone is touting that, well, he could do the First Step Act stuff. If you think the First Step Act stuff is in every prison, then you've not ever met anybody that's been to a federal prison. It just doesn't work that way. Now, Fort Dix, woo, programs out the wazoo. That dude could have taken a year off his sentence. Hey, Wharton Fissel, good to see you. He could have taken at least a year off of his sentence if he had been sent to Fort Dix, which is why he wanted to go there. He said he used to watch porn on cable TV as a kid. He absolutely did. He absolutely did. But there are a lot of kids that watch porn on cable TV who probably aren't doing what he's doing. I think that that's probably a part of it, though. But I think he probably saw some things that he shouldn't have seen, or was a part of some stuff that never should have happened. Serial sex offenders shouldn't be back in society. Yeah, well, in the feds, they will. There are people right now whose sentences were up 5 years ago, but they said you are a threat to society. They have to go in front of a board. The feds can absolutely keep sex offenders in there longer than their sentence. I know that's a slippery slope. I'm uncomfortable just talking about that because I want the worst for those people. But if you say that, can you not also go, what about bank robbers? Tommy's just one of those guys that's always going to rob banks. So his sentence is up. Let's keep him in there. That dude, he's a drug addict. His sentence is up. But if we let him back out, he's just going to, you see what I'm talking about with slippery slopes? We want the worst to happen. Let the boys take care of him. My gut says that Diddy's going to get smacked around in prison. It's either going to change who he is or he's going to fold up and bitch up. I mean, there's no other option. He's either going to become a man or a bitch, and he's going to do it pretty quick. And Raybrook is going to be Raybrook is not considered a really hard prison, but it's a lot harder than Fort Dix. And I've been to some soft prisons, and even the softest prisons on earth aren't soft 365 days a year, right? It just doesn't work that way. I've always said prison is boredom. It's boredom upon boredom upon boredom upon boredom until it goes wham, and then it's just the scariest 4 or 5 minutes of your life. And it's the waiting for that scary part that sucks. It's that boredom. And I say that because, you go to Victorville and it's not boredom. That crap's going off like this. And believe it or not, it's less traumatic than waiting for it to happen. You see someone walk by and give you the stink eye. If you're at a hard prison, you're going to go handle that. If you're not, you're wondering whether or not that guy's going to stab you the next time you see him. It's the dynamics of prisons are really bizarre. They really are. But I don't intend to ever go back. I'll just comment on them. Tell you what, people, I promise you we're going to be doing more Diddy shows. I won't be doing one a day. There's a lot of people that continue to do that. Then you got to make up stuff to talk about. And I don't mean that they're fabricating stuff, but we start cherry picking out the smallest of details, right? It's not healthy. It's not healthy at all. And we're kind of famous for it in this sobriety. Yeah, the warden at Raybrook, you know what? For always, forever, and for life. You are well informed. Yeah, that's the word actually from people on the inside is that the warden at Raybrook is a prick. That's the rumor. And if the warden sucks, believe it or not, you know what happens? It causes more fighting among the inmates, right? Because everybody believes that if they send someone in like that, they're doing it to clamp down on the inmates. And when the inmates get clamped down on, they don't fire back at staff because that doesn't work out very well, right? It just doesn't work out that well. All right, people. I promise we'll keep you updated on this. And there's some interesting stuff going on in the world. I'll be getting around to it. Don't know if I'll get to it tonight, but there's some really interesting stuff to talk about. Between now and the next time I see you, don't believe anything. Just keep checking up on everything people say. You'll be shocked how much you learn by accident. All right. I'm Tommy. I'll see you on the next one. God bless.